In this section, we're going to be taking a look at PDO, which stands for PHP Data Objects. And what it is it's a PHP extension that it was created to access databases and perform database tasks. It's very lightweight and it's extremely secure because you can use prepared statements, which prevents SQL injections and other security threats. So it's really recommended to use on large-scale projects, and it's actually a little easier. Some developers think it's easier than to use the MySQLi method. So we're going to go over this, and I believe the main project that we'll be building in the next section, I believe we'll be using PDO for that. So if you want to read more about PDO, just go to php.net and just search for PDO. There's a whole bunch of information. This is just the introduction, but you can see there's just a ton of information. There's all types of tags and options, and I'm not going to go into all of these because it would take up way too much time. I just want to go over the basics. So let's go to our htdocs folder, or our web folder, and I'm going to create a new folder called PDO. Alright, now I'm going to create a new document called index.php. And I'm basically going to go over CRUD. I'm going to go over create, read, update, and delete from our database using PDO. So let's open this up with Notepad, and let's open this up with Chrome. Okay, so alright, so the first thing we want to do is, if you remember in MySQLi, when we were using that, we would connect to a database and then we would see if there's any errors. We'd check for errors. So we're going to do that same thing now. And a common way to do that is by using a try-catch block. So it's basically for error handling. Let me just type this out. And this is how it's set up. And basically what you do is you put something in here that's going to do something, and if it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, when it's caught, it'll display the error. Okay, so for instance, what we want to do here is create a connection. So let's just we'll say connect to database. And how we do this is we need to create a database handler, and that handler is going to hold our connection. So we have to say new PDO and then some parentheses, and inside here we need our parameters. So we can say MySQL host equals localhost. Now this MySQL, this is new to you. We didn't have this in our MySQLi functions, because what this is you can use a different kind of database. You can use Postgres, or I think MySQLite, or some MSQL. There's a bunch of different database types that you can use, and this is just defining which one we want. So of course it's MySQL. And then we have the host, which is localhost. Next we need the database name, so we can write db name equals company. I think that, what else do we need? We should put the character set, which is char set equals UTF-8. And that's not mandatory, but it's good to throw in there. And next we need the comma and our database user, which is root, and then finally we need our password. Alright, so that should connect us. So now what we need to do is this catch here, we need to add a parameter which is PDO exception, and then we want to space and then E, and then we can use this E down here. We can display errors, and we can echo out E get message. Okay. Alright, so that should give us a message if it doesn't go like how it's supposed to. Let's put a PHP tag. So if we save that, let's run that. Well, we have to go to localhost / connect. Actually, where did we save this? Oh, PDO. Localhost / PDO. Alright, so we get no errors. Let's go back and let's mess up the password. So I'll throw an extra character in there. If we reload, we get access denied because we changed the password. Alright, and that's coming from this message. So it basically does the same thing as in our previous database connections with MySQLi. Alright, so now what I want to do is select data. So let's just put a title up here, select data. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is create a query. So the query is going to have, we need what's called a statement. Okay, so we're going to create a statement which is going to be STH is going to be the variable. Alright, and that's going to be equal to the database handler query. Alright, so this DBH, this is coming from up here. Okay, so the query we want to put, let's just do something simple. Let's just say select all from employees. Alright, so that is the query. So the next thing we need to do is we want to set the fetch mode, because there's multiple modes you can use to actually fetch the data. So we want to say STH what is it, set fetch mode, and we want to set that to PDO fetch OBJ. And what that's saying is we want to fetch our values in objects instead of an array. So now we can actually do the same thing as we've been doing. We can build our table. So let me go and let's go back to connect to, let's open that up, and let's see, let's grab this table. So we need to actually end this PHP block, throw in this table, and everything's going to be the same except for this here. We're not going to say result fetch object. All we have to do is STH fetch. That's it. So that's going to do the same thing. So if we save that and reload, we get our employees table. So you can see there's many different ways to do the same thing. This is my favorite way of doing it. It has the least amount of code. It's very secure. We didn't do any prepared statements yet. We're going to do that now, because we're going to do that when we insert data into the database. And prepared statements, they allow you to make sure that the right data is going in. So I'm going to actually comment all of this out. Alright, so now what we want to do is insert data. Okay, so first thing I want to do is, since we don't have a form set up for our inputs, I'm just going to create some dummy variables. Just pretend that these came in through a form. So we'll say first name. First name can be David. Last name can be Jackson. Let's see what else. Department. Let's make that design. And finally, email can be david@gmail.com. Alright, so those are our dummy variables. We want to insert these into the database. So now what we need to do is create a statement. And we can do that with the STH variable. A lot of people will also use STMT for statement, but I like to use STH. So that's going to be equal to our DBH, which is our database handler, and we're going to run the prepare method. Alright, so here's where we need to prepare our statement, and this is going to be an insert statement. So we're going to say insert into employees, and then we want our fields. You guys already know how to do this. So first name, it gets a little tedious after a while. First name, last name, department, and email. Okay, so let's make a space here, and we want to insert our values. Alright, so values, this is going to look a little weird because we're going to be using these colons and then first name, and these are just really placeholders. Last name, department, and email. Alright, so that looks good. This is a prepared statement. Instead of just adding, you know, Brad, Traversy, or whatever, or post variables, or anything like that, we have these placeholders. So what we need to do now is bind those placeholders. So we'll say bind values. And we can do that with STH, and then bind param, some parentheses, and this takes two parameters. The first is going to be the placeholder that you want to replace. In this case is first name, and this is going to be a string, so we put this in quotes. And what that's going to be replaced with is the first name variable, which comes from here, which in reality would come from a form usually. Alright, so now I can copy this, and we can do this for all our values. So we'll do last name, and I know this can get a little tedious, so you might want to create some kind of code library where you can paste in some default code and then just change a little bit of it instead of typing it all out like this. I mean, that's what I would do. I'm just typing it out just so you can understand it. Whenever I watch tutorials and they're just cutting and pasting every single thing, I get lost. It doesn't give me enough time to actually soak the information in, so that's why I do it this way. Email. Actually, you can see I have a mistake here. We have department here and just DEPT here, so I'm going to change this to department. All right. Okay, so the last thing we need to do here is execute it. It's not going to do nothing up until now, so now we just have to give our statement variable and then run the execute method. So that should insert a new value into our employees. So let's take a look at our database now. Okay, so let's look at our employees table, and we can see the last entry is Harry Johnson. So if we run this page, hopefully we'll get David Jackson. Okay, so I'm going to save that and let's go run this. Alright, so nothing's going to show up. We have no output. But if we go back, you can see now at the bottom here we have David Jackson, his department, and his email address. So we've inserted data using PDO. Alright, so now I want to do some updating. Alright, so let me comment all of this out. Alright, so now we're going to be update data. And I can probably actually copy most of this. Excuse me. Alright. So what we'll do here is update. Let's update Sarah. Let's say Sarah got married. So she wants to update her last name from White to I don't know, we'll say Logan. Alright, and she also switched departments. She's also going to be doing design now. Okay, so we want to change her last name and her department. Now we know that she's ID number 4, so let's go ahead and create an ID variable and set that to 4. Okay, so what we want to change is her last name. Alright, her last name is going to be Logan. So Logan, and her department, we can leave that because she's going to be switched to design. We can get rid of this email. So now we have the variables that we need. Now for the statement, we can just get rid of this whole insert statement. Actually, we'll just get rid of everything here. Alright, so we're going to say update employees set department to, we're going to use a placeholder here. Alright, set department to a department, and we want last name to the last name placeholder. Okay, and then of course we need a where clause, so we're going to say where ID is equal to ID placeholder. So let me move this down here. Alright. Alright. So we want to change the department and her last name. So now we got to bind these values. Let's say ID is going to be bound to the ID variable, which is up here. Last name, department. We can get rid of email. Alright, so good enough. Let's save this and take a look. We have Sarah White in marketing, so hopefully we can change that if we run this file and go back and reload. You see now we have Sarah Logan, who is in design. Alright, so that's how you can do an update using PDO. So the last thing I want to do is the easiest, which is delete. The easiest, but the most easiest to mess up as well, because if you forget that where clause in your deletes, you can end up deleting most of or even the whole table. Okay, so let's actually copy this. I'm going to say delete data. Okay, so let's see, who do we want to delete? Let's delete Jeff Dole. Okay, he has an ID of 7. So let's change this ID to 7. Let's see. So let's change this prepared statement. We can actually leave that where ID. We're going to say delete from employees, and we can bring this back up here. We're saying delete from employees where ID is equal to ID. So this is a placeholder, so we can bind that down here. Alright, so now we're binding this to this, which is 7. So this should delete employee number 7. And we can keep the execute. So let's save that. So you can see we have Jeff Dole. Let's run this file and reload, and Jeff Dole is no longer with us. So that's how you can do CRUD, create, read, update, and delete with PDO and prepared statements.